As we near the end of our journey through the books of the New Testament, we pause tonight to explore the epistle of 3 John. Commentator Adam Clarke notes that we seldom hear 3 John quoted, except among some troublesome fellows in the church. That's the phrase that he uses. He says this epistle has been generally neglected, much like the minor prophets of the Old Testament. Now, Clarke has a theory of why this happens. It deserves some attention on our part. He says, for many readers, bulk is everything. What does he mean by that? We study the big books. We study the larger books. But small epistles like, 2 John, 3 John, Jude, he says they get ignored. But here's the thing. 3 John, like these others, correctly handled, can be very useful for Christians and in the church today. Smaller epistles like 2 John and 3 John can be copied on one side of one piece of papyrus, the paper type material. Now, Jude is another small epistle. It's a little longer. It would likely fill up a front and a back of such a piece of papyri. Here's the thing I want to impress upon us. We should be careful not to judge the value of these epistles by their size. 3 John only has 14 verses. But let me make this analogy. Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It is considered one of the most important presidential speeches in our country's history. I'm told that it contained 10 sentences. Very, very short speech. 3 John, this depends on the translation we use. 3 John contains 10 sentences in the King James. The Revised Standard uses more, breaks it up into more sentences. There's 17. New International Version, it's 23 sentences, but you get the idea. Very small. But so was the Gettysburg Address, and we recognize the impact that has had on history. The Gettysburg Address contains 269 words. 3 John, by the way, contains 294 words. 2 and 3 John, because we studied 2 John last week, these two epistles may be small, but both have a powerful message. When we looked at 2 John last week, we noted some key words and ideas and themes in that short letter, specifically truth, love, and obedience. I want to remind you to hang on to those tonight because we see those same concepts, similar message, similar theme in 3 John tonight. I think this is probably the big difference for us. 2 John seems to be written to a congregation. No individual names are found in the epistle. 3 John appears to be written to an individual. Now, you include the recipient Gaius, there are 3 individuals named in the letter. Gaius, Diotrephes, and Demetrius. 3 names. In fact, those 3 names really provide a good outline for this letter. Gaius is mentioned in verses 1 through 8. Diotrephes in verses 9 through, 9 and 10, 9 and 11. Really, verse 11 brings Gaius back up into that, but we'll talk about that. Demetrius is mentioned in verses 12 through 14. So you have Gaius, Diotrephes, Demetrius. Let's begin in verse 1. We're going to read the first 8 verses in this one setting. The elder, to my friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Dear friend, you were faithful in what you were doing for the brothers and sisters, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. Please send them on their way in a manner that honors God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. We ought therefore to show hospitality to such people so that we may work together for the truth. Just as it did in John's other writings, truth takes a center stage in this third epistle. The word truth is found in verse 1. It's found twice in verse 3. It's found in verse 8. We see it again in verse 12. Remind you, there's only 14 verses in the letter. John's greatest joy was to hear that other Christians, his spiritual children, as he called them, his greatest joy was to hear that they were walking in the truth. Why this emphasis on truth? There's some good ideas behind that. Perhaps it has something to do that at this point, it's believed that John is the last surviving apostle. He referred to himself as an elder, and that's more than age. It deals with, maturity, wisdom, the authority of apostleship, leadership. A number of I guess when you start looking at the dating of this writing, most dates that I have seen put John's writing somewhere between 80 and 90 AD. Now, there are going to be other theories, but the majority that I have seen, that's where we find it. By that point, the church had been, I'll use the word, attacked by false teaching. Particularly, as we have mentioned in the past few weeks, this false teaching from the Gnostics, who did not believe that Jesus was 100% divine and 100% human. As we've discussed, it's critical. It's critical that we get this part right. To be less than 100% divine would really put into question about the idea that Jesus, Messiah, the only begotten Son of God, and it puts all of that claim into shaky ground. But Jesus was 100% divine. He was also 100% human. Now, to claim anything less than that, it would really complicate this idea that Jesus came and lived among us and that he didn't sin. Well, of course he didn't sin. He wasn't 100% human. You see, it makes that complicated. But Jesus was 100% divine and 100% human. Truth takes a center stage. I want to go back just for a moment. I want to read from the Gospel of John, a number of passages here. I believe it's 8, just very quick verses. Here's the point. I want you to notice the emphasis on the truth. John chapter 1, verse 14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John 3:21. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. John 4:24. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. John 8, verse 32. Jesus said, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 14:6. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John chapter 16, verse 13. But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all the truth. He will not speak on his own. He will speak only what he hears, and he will tell you what is yet to come. John chapter 17, verse 17, Jesus prayed, "Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth." And then Jesus told Pilate in John 18, verse 37, "The reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." In contrast to all of those statements, Jesus said in John chapter 8, verse 44, well, this is how he identified Satan. He's telling religious leaders, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. There's an emphasis on the truth. The Gospel of John, 1 John, 2 John, and in 3 John. In 3 John, Gaius is an example that truth and love go hand in hand. In verse 3, John writes, "It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it." See, there we have an emphasis on truth and also an emphasis on obedience. In verse 6, "They have told the church about your love, and please send them on their way in a manner that honors God." So we have again this emphasis on truth, love, and obedience. So there are 4 ideas I want to share with us from these first 8 verses in 3 John. And the first one is this. This is for the positive, for the good example. To walk in the truth, we must know the truth. To walk in the truth, we must know the truth. Here's the thing. Gaius didn't stumble onto the truth. It's not like he landed there by accident. To know the truth, we must seek the truth. This means it is a deliberate effort, both to understand the truth and to walk in it. Because Satan works overtime. If he can't keep us from knowing the truth, then he is going to try to fill us with pride over how much we know. Remind us of 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1, where Paul writes, "Knowledge puffs up, while love builds up." Knowledge puffs up. That's the temptation, is that we get knowledge just for the sake of knowing knowledge. But we seek this truth in order to practice the truth. Now, second point, to walk in the truth, we must grow in the truth. Know the truth, grow in the truth. In verses 3 and 4, John mentions this phrase, walking in the truth. I love this because knowing the truth requires deliberate effort. Walking in the truth requires purposeful direction. We are walking in the truth. Back in 1 John chapter 2, verse 6, this is from the New American Standard. "The one who says he abides in him ought to himself walk in the same manner as he walked." In other words, whoever claims to be a Christian, whoever claims to have this relationship with the Lord must walk as Jesus walked. Now, we have major translations, and we have many of them that say walk as Jesus walked. Others will say live as Jesus lived. And they're saying the same thing. The true essence of this verse suggests that living for Jesus, it is a life walk. It's a life walk. So we want to know the truth, grow in the truth. Now the result of this is love. Verse 6, Gaius walked in the truth. He was also known for his love. Now here's the thing that we need to remember. Truth and love go hand in hand. Truth is not a club. It's not a stick that we walk around with to beat people into submission and obedience. It doesn't work that way. Now, I will tell you that because I have seen in the past, in my growing up, even in the church, of where people have taken the truth and basically tried to use it as a sledgehammer and waylaying it over the heads of people. Friends, it doesn't work that way. If truth and love, if this is not used together, that's what Paul said in Ephesians 4:15, we speak the truth in love. We have to know that if we are living in the truth and we're growing in the truth, the result of that is going to be a love for others. Now, that doesn't mean, because remember, there's two sides of the road here. We don't beat people into submission, but it's also not proper to emphasize love in a way that is soft on truth. Requires that balance. But remember this, God is truth. And God is love. Godly people know the value of truth and love. Final point in these first 8 verses, love shows itself in good deeds. Know the truth, grow in the truth. Results in love. Love shows itself in how we treat other people. When those who preached the truth came, I love this, Gaius practiced hospitality in the way that he met them, and then in the way that he sent them off. He did so in a way that honored God. I want to remind you that in 1 Timothy chapter 3, Titus chapter 1, that hospitality is named as a characteristic of one who would serve as an elder in the church. Hospitality is just that important. Just because we don't talk about it enough doesn't mean it's not important. We need to talk about it more. In Romans chapter 12, verse 13, we are commanded to practice hospitality. Titus chapter 2, verse 14 says, we are to be a people who are zealous for good deeds. We want to be a people who practice hospitality. That love demonstrates itself in good deeds. Let's move on to verses 9 and 10. We are introduced here to Diotrephes. 3 John, only chapter, verse 9. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will not welcome us. So when I come, I will call attention to what he is doing, spreading malicious nonsense about us. Not satisfied with that, he even refuses to welcome other believers. He also stops those who want to do so and puts them out of the church. It may have, I'm not convinced. I don't know that Diotrephes had this problem with a false theology, a false doctrine or false teaching. I'm not so sure that was his problem as much as it was that he was filled with selfishness, pride, power hungry. He was a negative example. He was a negative example in the way that he was living out his life before the church. Now, 4 ideas about this negative example that we see in this passage. First of all is this, he just loved to be first. And if there's a concept that goes against, that's contrary to what Jesus taught, Jesus says if you want to be first, you must be last and the servant of all. The Apostle Paul wrote that we should consider others better than ourselves. Friends, a servant heart is foundational for Christianity. Well, we can learn a lot from about what not to do from Diotrephes. He loved to be first. We also see this negative example that negative people use gossip and slander to tear others down, spreading malicious nonsense. Now, there's a spectrum of ideas when we start talking about gossip and slander, but I like these definitions that I placed before us tonight. Gossip is sharing information. May be true, may not be, but it's sharing with those who have no business hearing it. A gossip uses it to boost his status, sharing information with those who have no business hearing it. Now, slander is using partial truths or flat out lies to damage someone's reputation. Someone may say something that's partly true, but the reason they do that is because, well, he can claim, well, what I said was the truth. Careful. Was kind of true. Wasn't true. It's kind of true. So we have gossip that you're talking about this thing to people that don't have any business hearing it. They don't have any business hearing it. And slander, you're just trying to share something, whether it's true or not. Usually not. But you're sharing it, it's a half-truth at best, but you're sharing it to damage someone's reputation. Friends, we need to be careful when we're talking about other people. We need to be careful to whom we're sharing that, and we need to be careful what we're saying. If we walk into a room and we're saying something about someone and that person is not there, and the things that we're sharing only damage their reputation, and we've not, oh wow. I'm going to remind you too, hospitality is something we don't talk enough about in the church, but I don't think we talk enough about gossip, slander, and the negative uses of our tongue. I think we need to be very careful that we don't fall into that category. John called that malicious nonsense. Another idea behind this negative example is that negative examples use relationships for power. You know, Diotrephes did not welcome those who would preach the truth, but it went to the next level. He stood in the way of others who wanted to practice hospitality. You do that, I'll kick you out of the church. Apparently, he had enough power to at least try to utilize that, because this leads us into that fourth point, that he intimidated others. He intimidated others. They were at least fearful that he had the ability, that he had the power to kick them out of the church. If others didn't follow Diotrephes, now here's a word that really fits. It's not one that's used in Scripture. It's a modern day word, but it really fits it. He bullied other people to do things his way. He bullied other people to do things his way. You know, I'm reminded about this passage. It's Mark chapter 10, verse 42. Jesus is talking to his disciples. It's another one of those verses that talks about the importance of serving, the importance of having a lifestyle of service, that if you want to be first, you must be last and servants of all. It's there, though, that Jesus said, you know that those who are regarded as leaders of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Jesus is pointing to that negative example of power, intimidating others. All right, we need to go to verse 11. We've still got a few verses left. Verse 11, John turned, and I told you about this early in the lesson, where he turned and he addressed Gaius. Dear friend, he said, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. So he talks to Gaius about the importance of following the good example, of being the good example. And that's then that John mentions in verse 12, Demetrius, another positive example in the church. He says, Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone, even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. I have much to write you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends here send their greetings. Greet the friends there by name. Boy, this was a message. Only 14 verses, but it was a message that was most needed then, and it's most needed now. As we look around us, we see positive examples, people who love Christ and live for Christ, But we also see, and this can be in the world, but it can also be in the church, negative examples. People who have been overcome by selfish ambition or some other sin. John would tell us, look to the ones who lift others up. He said, if you have a choice to be one of the two, be one of the ones who lifts others up, who lives by the truth. We know the truth. We grow in the truth. We see that truth comes about and it shows itself in love, and love shows itself in good deeds of how we treat other people. Don't be that negative example. Don't be that negative example that when we think about what those did that were impacted of Demetrius, that he loved to be first. He used this malicious nonsense of speaking gossip and slander. He used his relationships for power, and then he intimidated other people to get them to do things his way. And John said, don't live that way. He said, you've got a choice. You want to follow the good example or the bad. You want to be the good example or the bad. Follow the good and be the good. Years ago as a youth minister, I used to use this analogy. I would have one person stand up on a chair in the middle of the room. And then I'd have a second person come. The point being is that the person on the chair represented the good, positive example, and the one that was on the ground represented the bad, the negative example. And the point was this, is which is easier, to pull the person up onto the chair or for the person on the ground to pull the person off the chair? I really, when there's equal pull going on, the person always came down. Always. And I think that that's a reminder to us of the power of the negative example, of how it's always easier to pull people down than to lift them up. Don't be like Diotrephes, who was tearing people down, setting a horrible example. We want to follow the example of men like Gaius, who treated others in a way that honored God, was concerned with the truth, that the truth be taught, that the truth be shared. And then we have Demetrius, who also was doing great things, that his positive example had spread and was known by others, even to the point that John praised him for that and recognized his good example. Always strive to know the truth, grow in the truth, and to show it in love and in good deeds.